Hey everyone, Johan here. I beta tested a few of my videos and got some valuable feedback. So this video is an attempt to, in a general sense, give you a what is greenhouse gases and why should I care? It's been done before. I'm going to try to emphasize a few things and in particular the US audience and try not to get too technical about everything. So, a few things up front. Human condition, we started with farming communities that's gone on for thousands of years. I, right up front, do not think that the US is the boogeyman for greenhouse emissions. Number of reasons for that, but let's face it, if you're as old as I am, you know that it was not a topic that anyone anywhere discussed prior to the 1980s, and it wasn't a big deal to 2000. We started with farming, and everyone did farming. The US and a lot of the West then progressed. We got into trains, we developed plows, which led to different and better ways to farm. Then, of course, the evil automobile came along and airplanes, and all of these things add up, no doubt about it. And there came a point in time that it started to become a hey, maybe we need to think about what we're doing with our carbon fossil fuels. But make sure we got our history right here, folks. When I was looking at it in the 1980s, the issue that everyone was worried about was, are we going to have enough? Not what they were doing to the planet. So the history is that the US became very prosperous, and in the course, the amount of energy you use and prosperity, they go together. By the time we're in the year 2000, no doubt, absolutely true, US was number one in greenhouse gas emission contributions. We have eaten up historically a lot of the budget. So about now, I should be tossing up on the screen an emissions slide showing total emissions, but I'm not going to do that. What I want to focus on in this video is that economic activity and greenhouse gases are related. One of the reasons the US is such a big emitter is it has by far and away the biggest economy. If another country had a larger economy, it would probably be a bigger emitter. And oh, by the way, in a separate video, I talk about we're not the biggest emitter anymore. China is, and that's a topic all unto itself. So let's talk about something that doesn't get as much press, carbon intensity. That's basically a measure of for how many goods you produce, how efficiently is the country using its energy, and also is that energy driving a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. I've got a couple slides, so the neat movies are gone for a minute. Take a look at these. The first one talks about emissions from 1945 to the year 2000. You can see that in terms of intensity, the US was high, for that matter, still is higher than it should be, but it was going down slowly. Around the year 2000, the light bulb truly hit us that we were a big problem with emissions. Action started to be taken, and let's be honest, it wasn't just about emissions, it was energy in general, driving down costs for the economy. So, time for another graph. And on this one, you can see the US has continued to drop its carbon intensity. I'm going to say right now, no excuse, not nearly fast enough. The problem's not a mystery anymore, needs to be coming down faster. But we, for every increase in wealth, are doing it more and more efficiently, just not fast enough. And in fact, the problem today going forward has more to do with other countries whose CIs are way higher than ours. We're not number one in emissions. We're number 2 on our way to number 3 or 4. As a general statement, I'm going to say that most people in the US get there's a problem. We also are tired of being lectured to. This is not an excuse, this is the way it is. So let's talk about what needs to be done and what part we can play in it. Okay, so how about setting a target for carbon intensity? Pick the country. I have some thoughts. Germany's doing better than the US, and they're a pretty big country. France is doing even better yet. Or maybe Japan. Pick it. But stop with the reparations discussions. You don't have people's attention when that's your topic. You're not going to fix all the world's ills when talking about greenhouse gases. If the discussion wants to be about technology that needs to be provided so that countries that are less developed can get a running start, hey, I think that sells. And when we're talking about carbon taxes and stuff, well, maybe the rule needs to be, and this could include the US, that if you don't hit your CI targets, your goods get a tariff or a duty, depending on whether they're going in and out, added to them. That'll make people pay attention. All people. So let's now switch to language barriers. This is going to sound silly, but when talked about in the US, all the time you'll hear 1 degree, 1.5 degree, 2 degree. Guess what? We use Fahrenheit here, not centigrade. The average person doesn't think in centigrade. Be specific. 2 degrees centigrade is 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. The difference between telling someone, hey, your body temperature is 1 degree versus 3.6 degrees over its normal, 98.6, is the difference between someone taking a Tylenol and someone deciding to go to the doctor. And it's a really good analogy for the climate discussion. So this sounds like a little thing, but it's a big deal. Make sure when you're talking about greenhouse gases and temperature impact, everyone's clear on the unit of measurement. And if you're talking specifically to someone in the US, I strongly recommend Fahrenheit. Next up, confidence level, statistical accuracy, all that stuff. Dumb it down. Talk about 5 degrees to 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't say 20% confidence, don't say 25. Besides the very language barrier issue, as a person who's pretty good with statistics, I think that it also creates a false sense of accuracy, which a lot of deniers pick up on. There's noise in the numbers, and we're moving into an area where temperatures have not been under the particular set of conditions for the sun and all the good stuff that affects the climate. We're entering into uncharted territory. So there is some real potential variability in the data. The other thing about that is the likely outcomes are not going to be just, hey, if I say 5 degrees, it might be 4, it might be 6. If I say 5 degrees, well, maybe there's a chance it's 4, but there's probably also a significant chance it's 5, 6, or 7, because these are not normal curves that we're dealing with anymore. You only need to look at the 23 water warming of the oceans to say, hey, yeah, it looks like if we're going to be missing in terms of our models, we're going to be missing on too low an estimate. Okay, here's the part no one wants to hear, deniers and activists alike. Greenhouse gases are going to cause big problems. You're going to see 3 to 6, 7, 8 degrees rise in Fahrenheit over the next 70 to 80 years. I'm not going to bother talking about the Paris Accords. They're a joke. And COP28, that climate conference that was just held, That was a bad joke. You're going to see oceans rise. In the first 80 years, actually, most of it's going to be nothing compared to what comes after 200 years from now. But you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4 feet worth of sea level rise, half of which just comes from the oceans thermally expanding. You're going to have more extreme weather, droughts, floods. These things are going to happen. And the worst impacts are going to be the ones that no one's even thinking about today. At the end of the day, you look at all the different climate models, you plug in the pledges that are being made now, they don't get you there, and no one even believes the pledges. So let's talk about even the more ambitious climate goals now. And this is going to be not a pleasant discussion, so buckle up. Okay, so we've established the temperature is high, the patient is sick, and it's not something that a couple aspirin is going to fix. Doctor's counting his money, and I have a whole future video on how painful this bill is going to be. So the U.S. has established some goals for 2030 and what we're going to do with our greenhouse gas emissions. And I've made some excuses, reasons, call it what you will, on why the U.S. is not the source of all evil. But let's also take a serious look in the mirror. We are far from the solution. We are not leading the world or showing them the right way to do things. And I'd like to tell you that when I look at the president's goals for 2030, I'm optimistic. Can't say that. First reason, the goal calls for a roughly 30% reduction in our emissions. I don't see that happening. I look at the numbers for transportation. I know what we're trying to do with electric cars. When I run the math, it's a good start. It's a good idea, but it's not going to get us where we need to be on transportation quickly. Same thing's true with power. If every bit of coal was replaced with solar, that'd be a good start. I don't think that's going to happen, at least not by 2030. And even if it did, we're not doing anything about nuclear or some of the other technologies we're going to need to back up the solar and the wind, because it's going to take some core power sources along with those renewables. And we'll talk about those more in future videos. Even if I give credit for some other efficiencies in other areas of the economy, I see us falling well short of the goals that are set by 2030. And that's even assuming we stick to those goals and go full bore. Have a whole video on EVs, and that itself is not a slam dunk. So thanks for listening. Appreciate you taking the time. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Have a lot more videos going into more depth on these topics, and look forward to talking to you all soon. Take care.